the structuring allegation.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, what we're seeing a ton of going on at the federal level.
That's IRS forfeiture, right, and that's happening. I mean, what did it, I saw that Institute for Justice just put out a little video on that showing like $240 million seized from bank accounts just in the last 8 years or something like that.
Yeah, the funny thing is, the rationale for the structuring seizures are basically that, you know, again, let's assume an illegal activity. We're going to assume an illegal activity, so we're going to take this money. Well, what's the illegal activity? Well, you were trying to avoid reporting laws. So you were making deposits at under, what was the threshold, $10,000? So here's the thing. If either you're damned if you do and you have to report, or you're damned if you don't and you get your stuff seized. So, I mean, it's the kind of thing where we need to seriously ask ourselves, with the power that we're giving the government to even have this audit authority. And, you know, here's where I think some of the conservative message, you know, is drowned out in rancor, but it's really, really important that it gets heard on this. They're not, you know, conservatives aren't pushing against, you know, Obama because, you know, it's a knee-jerk reaction. Some of them are, but most of them are not. Think of the actual property rights and your property interests that are, you know, just been absolutely under assault, both from the IRS, from the Department of Justice, and all the subsidiary organizations. And again, this doesn't lie just on Obama's watch too. This goes back to, shoot, I mean, you said the 80s. I mean, it really started ramping up in the late 60s. So, I mean, pushing against the growth of government's an easy conservative vanguard, but stories like this illustrate why conservatives make this point. Is because this is what happens when a government goes unchecked. And then, again, at the end of the day, you know, you could win your case, and then you say, okay, well, I'm going to turn the screws. I'm going to try to, you know, file some sort of motion that illustrates how my civil rights were harmed on this. Well, then you got to deal with sovereign immunity. And then
we have a major victim of sovereign immunity sitting right here.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. I mean, sovereign immunity. You want to talk about legal arcaneness and
I don't want to talk about it at all.
Exactly. So I mean, it's, you know, I mean, I don't even think that a lot of that officers who engage in this and district attorneys who engage in this more than others, I don't think they're bad people.
No,
I think
right.
It's a case of the market acting out with terrible incentives in place.
Some are bad people, but it's a small percentage.
Some, but very few.
So your next slide had said militarization of the police. Well, and I kind of had a question about are there policies? It seems to me that there is a culture of us versus them with the police, and I don't think it necessarily. I mean, I'm not blaming the people for creating that. I'm blaming both parties, police and the people, for creating the us versus them. And I hypothesize it has to do with the lack of beat, you know, police on their, like, walking their beat and getting to know their communities. That's kind of one of the things that I've identified. But I wanted to ask you if there's a policy or policy framework that we could set up to sort of reverse the trend of the us versus them with the police.
That's a tough nut to crack. But first, allow me to start with a disclaimer. Anything on police militarization is me representing myself in my personal capacity.
Before we go to that, I've got one question on the asset forfeiture.
Yes.
Can it be as low as a Class B misdemeanor and you get assets forfeited?
It depends on which particular part. You'll see with the prostitution and littering, that actually carves out misdemeanors. So still available for anything, a felony, attendant to a felony prosecution charge or a felony littering charge.
Wow.
That's throwing a lot of stuff out your window.
Simple ashtray.
Yeah, that's not what's the I forget what the anti-littering campaign was around here with
Don't mess with Texas.
Yeah, that's messing with Texas quite a bit if you're going to draw a felony on it. But
so somebody arrested for criminal trespass is not. We see this with people.
But you're thinking of the arrest and the seizure as being related, and they're actually not.
yeah,
Why are they not? I mean, I always thought that
Because they
when
don't
they're
have to.
seizing
That's
assets,
what-
they had to
that's what we're
be
saying,
related.
man.
Yeah, and
I always
it's,
thought they had to be
They should
related
be.
to the criminal.
and this is the hard, and this is.
Yeah, you can beat the rap, but you can't beat the right, basically what it comes down to. The cops can do illegal things, and they're saying, yeah, okay, it's illegal, you'll win, but you gotta go through the process.
Right, and the biggest thing, to remember about this is, you know, I tend to think that police discretion, prosecutorial discretion, and judicial discretion are in net good things. But if we have laws that erect a framework that offers incentives and the avenues for abuse, we can't sit here and like slap our faces like, how is this gonna happen? When clearly, I mean, we're empowering it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Don't you think that the only way that it's going to take away is that they cannot directly benefit in any way from those seizures? It has to be completely taken out of, like, all that's gonna be funneled into the broken education system, or all of it's gonna be funneled into senior citizens care, or something, to where it's like.
I mean, I think both of our organizations would like to see this authority just cease to exist. I don't even
Yeah,
know.
of
I mean,
course,
I mean,
yeah. That's exactly what she's saying.
and no, and here's,
If they
TPPF
don't
is
have
on
that
record.
incentive-
TPPF is on
I
record
agree.
saying I mean, criminal forfeiture in the classical understanding, not as the actually civil forfeiture masquerading in sheep's clothing. Criminal forfeiture, if you are doing something illegal and you have tools or proceeds of it, I'm not going to lose sleep about a person losing the property interest in that. You know, if they're human smuggling in a truck and they lose the truck, I'm not gonna lose sleep.
If they're convicted.
Exactly.
That's, yeah.
Exactly. The
It's a really
problem
clear
is,
cut
we're talking
way.
about a wall that delineates that doesn't exist. And that's where the problem is. I mean, I think Matt said it best, that, you know, there are some people that are interested in keeping the status quo. On the bright side, there are some states that are seeking to, well, I think most people have seen the writing on the wall. There are less this session, but in previous years, recently, though, there have been states that have tried to, let's see what else we can get, you know? Let's try to erode some of these standards even further. And, our state.
Weren't there cases of like an apartment owner, and they seized his apartment building because one of his tenants was a drug dealer?
Right.
That guy's a
And he had
kingpin,
to-
sir.
And he had to
Yeah,
prove
exactly.
that he didn't know that his, that was the standard they were putting on him.
Well,
He had to prove he didn't know that his tenant.
I think the classical IJ case of the Hotel Caswell just proves that. It was the same exact thing. I think that was in Michigan.
Michigan was terrible for this. Michigan was also the state where they like to take people's cars.
I'm from Toledo, Ohio, so I'm only going to give you about 10 more minutes of bagging on Michigan. And then I'm going to remind you again, and then allow you to continue. But Michigan actually, though, is, if you look at the federal legislature, you generally see some of the representatives from Michigan actually leading the charge against this. You have Representative Amash, you have Representative Wahlberg. They are the ones that are actually trying to at least do what they can federally to get that end around out of there, to actually pull out the ability to bypass any sort of protection put by the state. So.
Yeah, I saw that the new Attorney General, you maybe touched on this, new Attorney General nominee has came out in support of armed civil asset forfeiture.
I was going to say really quickly, and this is something Derek already knows, but there's, I think, a lot of law reviews and other people that kind of look at this as a scholarly, like, how do we fix this? They come around to what you're saying, right? Like, ultimately, you have to remove
So
the
basically, you're
incentive.
saying I'm a genius.
You're just anticipating the body of law 20 years from now. So, are you
No,
a
I mean-
genius? Probably. But no, I just think, like, what you're saying is not incorrect. I think what's practically possible, this session, that's the bad news.
Yeah, what
right?
is
It's good news, bad
what
news.
is
When I got involved, when I first started looking at this, I had very little legislative experience of what was possible, what you could do. I said the same thing. I said, why don't we just put a provision in there that says, without a criminal conviction, the property has to be returned. It's really simple.
Right.
Yeah.
But
What about on the local level? Could we do,
I would argue that's even more outlandish from a practicality standpoint.
why is that?
because they rely so much more heavy on the
Houston, they were
funds for their
seizing
budgets.
homes, the city would take a home if it was vacant and
Blighted.
yeah,
open tile.
All right, but we need to know what is practical this session,
Yeah.
because that's
Well-
why we're here. So what can we do?
Well, what's practical is what we've seen so far.
What we've seen so far is not
Clear and convincing, clear and convincing, and they all say the same thing, I believe, is it's a step. It's not ideal, but it's better than the current
It is,
situation.
well, those two bills are.
I'm hopeful that we'll see something a little bit better come from a different office, but I don't know where that's gonna be yet, because he hasn't filed it, or they. I think.
Well, too, just
He or
using
she.
legislation to create awareness, and not backing off, getting what you can get this session, but using it to educate.
Right, and if I can say in the abstract though, these reporting bills seem like the most tepid of, steps in the abstract of justice, right? But you have to keep in mind,
What does that word mean?
just weak.
Lukewarm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, and again, that's not my assessment of the bill, but if you look at it from a, well, what, out of every possible eventuality that can come to pass, you'd say that's on the less active spectrum. However, you have to look at what these bills would do is that they would basically be shining a spotlight in probably one of the darkest areas. Now, here's the thing, people have raised the question, well, okay, they're already reporting now, you can still get, all you have to do is file a an open records request with the Attorney General to get it. This is public information. That's true, and, well, I mean, it's true, and I guess in one way of looking at it. But if you actually follow it through, there is not good audit authority. There's no way to tell that what is turned into the Attorney General is actually representative of what's in the forfeiture account. Now, the larger counties, the counties that do have these forfeiture accounts, the county judge needs to certify these reports. So, there's issues with that too. I think audit authority is a good way to go. Audit authority in conjunction with reporting provisions.
But we're
Again.
not dealing with a situation where only one of those bills is just the go-to bill. Like, we can have multiple, like, we can have a reporting bill that we're behind and also something that raises the bar of.
How viable are those reporting bills?
I can't answer that. I can't. No, I'm unfortunately.
I think he hates answering these questions. So I think it's really hard to handicap legislation, particularly in early February, right? For those of you that work in offices, probably agree. But I mean, if you kind of take a step back, the Senate is definitely, if not more libertarian, at least wants everybody to think more libertarian, right? I mean, I think they're trying to seem more, I don't know. What do you all think? Is that fair? No need to comment, doesn't get employed in this building. Yeah, yes, ma'am.
What percentage of people that work in this building are even aware of this problem?
So that's actually, that's some of the, we're actually hitting on some of the good news. I know it doesn't sound like
So
there's
I
much
mean,
good
maybe
news
some of them
here.
are just like, oh my God, we're doing this is horrible.
That's definitely, that happens, no
So,
question. But groups like TPPF and our litigation and other things have raised the profile of this. So, just really quickly, when you're working on an issue, first you have to get everybody to figure out that there is an issue, right? And so,
Right.
in some ways, we're still at that point. You make a great point, and the reason that I have any enthusiasm about these reporting bills is if we don't even have systematic kind of public reporting, it's hard to even know what we're talking about, right? So sometimes you got to set the stage and then plan to move forward and address different parts of it as you go forward. All this could happen at the same time too, but to me, reporting it's a nice jumping off point for even better advocacy. So I see it as not a total waste of time, even though it feels like you're kind of leaving all these people on the side of the road having their shit taken. But at least you can.
At least we get to see what shit is taken.
Exactly, right, yeah. You feel much
If
better
they
if you have a number, that just makes you feel much better.
But not only do you get to see it, but that creates future awareness. Media is built around that. There was a shock treatment reporting bill that us, ACLU, and a bunch of other groups worked on and passed in '93. And out of that, it turned out that 2/3 of the people that were getting shock treatment were over 65, because Medicare would pay for it. It turned out that 27 people over the age of 90 got shock treatment one year. That all made media, right? Because there was a reporting system in place. Right? right? And that led to other legislation that, you know, it was a good thing. Always go for reporting bills if you can get them.
Yeah, there's a question in
You're
that.
saying if they report, so what is that, if we were to get one of these bills passed, would they have the option of not reporting?
There are none that are filed thus far, at least in the list that I have, that empowers any sort of audit authority.
Yeah.
So in other words.
So it's all voluntary?
You can't double check.
Yeah, in other words,
It's
they're
not
like.
voluntary, but you
Yeah.
have a hard time vetting it, you know.
Yeah, you know, very large county go like, oh, we didn't bring in any money this year. You're like,
Wow.
Really?
Which,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
you're
which
certified.
is saying sounds
Right.
ridiculous because everybody gets, you get put in jail if you don't turn in your taxes or whatever, but this happens constantly. Like, I can't even stress enough how often people don't bother, like, how many TEA reporting requirements are just ignored by school districts?
A great example of this, and this is one of the things that, because we're talking a lot about, in a lot of the juvenile justice circles, we're talking about truancy. So one of the issues with truancy is you have to keep in mind is the way the statute's currently set up, that a school district, as soon as a kid has skipped 3 days of school in 4 weeks, they can be filed on for failure to attend school, which is a Class C misdemeanor. So you skip school, that is a criminal activity. Or at 10 days, in 6 months, the school district must file.
It's mandatory, yeah.
And we are sitting there in an interim hearing and district after district going, that's ridiculous, we don't do that. We don't file till like the 36th absence. It's like, you do realize
You're under oath.
you already checked it, I was saying, you already checked the little system that says that you're under oath, and you just said that we willingly flaunt the law.
We don't follow that law.
But I
They
think
weren't
that
lying.
that's, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong.
This
like,
is what makes Derek paranoid about them not doing reporting, right? I mean, fundamentally.
Exactly, and the thing is, it's like, if you look at why they're flaunting the law, it's for the right reason. It goes, look,
Right, in this case.
this kid's grandmother was sick, and she's the only way he gets to school, and she was sick for 3 weeks. That's 15 days. You know, so they're like, yeah, we didn't file on him, you know, and it's like, that's the best thing, but that shows an unworkable law is the problem.
Yeah.
Why not torpedo the law?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
So if this session, I'm trying to understand about, the process of change, I guess, policy change.
We are too.
Well, and so.
Once you know, please.
Yeah, figure it out.
So well, you all have more experience than I do. If there's, if this session is about informing the legislative body that there's an issue and this is the issue, then is the next step informing the public? Because I know this group, we hear this and we think this is a huge violation, but if it's not happening to you in the general public, do you know that's going on? Is it something that people are gonna get passionate about? And so it seems like if this session is about informing the legislators, then we can work after this session to inform the public and get the public fired up about it, which will then stimulate next session to actually change something.
I'd actually say it's probably a little farther along than that. I mean, you know, politics always follows culture, and I think the culture is waking up to this.
So if there was a bill that said you have to at least be charged with the crime or your property is immediately returned, and then convicted of a crime for the property to be kept, forfeited, and we could bring that to the public's attention, would there be enough pressure from the public to have some traction for that bill?
That's a C4
That's a
question.
media
Yeah,
campaign.
you're not that against
When-
that.
when
But
you say
I think
convicted
it's
of a
just
crime?
for- yeah.
Well, that
Because even if you're charged, they could charge you with
That's fine.
anything. and
But
it
if you're
counts
not
as
charged, the property gets returned.
Well, are
You're
they
not-
doing that? I mean, is there cases of people, assets being confiscated without a charge?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes.
Those need to make the media, that creates the awareness.
I thought that Institute of Justice report said a large percentage, if not 80,
Yeah.
without charges.
No charge. Basically, the cops pulled
Steal
you over
it.
and says, give me
Am I
that
wrong?
stuff.
That's right,
Stuff.
that's right.
It's like, what did I do wrong? Well, you didn't do anything wrong. I
The
want your
mob.
stuff, give it to me.
And if I could just say one thing about Institute for Justice, unfortunately, you know, Matt's not here, and Arif being a new father, I mean, I guess we can give him a pass. They are.
They were invited, but
What?
it was last week.
I didn't know Arif was a father already, so.
I hope I didn't. I hope I didn't out him. I didn't want to give you that secret. I know it's fairly public knowledge. They are and now Andrew is with them. They have been for the longest time, and I mean the longest time, probably about a good decade if we go to their national organization, or probably even more. They were the only people fighting this. The only people. So I mean, you have to keep in mind that we have 2 full-time attorneys here in Texas, and they are litigating cases in Alabama. They are litigating cases in Louisiana. They are basically the southwest, or the southern version of basically, I'll say Pacific Legal Foundation, but they're smaller. And if you look, I mean, they're DC, they have a little bit more staff in the DC office, but as you know, you're not gonna get anything through the federal legislature in, you know, the next, I don't know, 3 or 4 millennia. But I think that's emblematic that it takes just a small group of people to really gaslight this issue. I mean, they have been fighting tirelessly and thanklessly for the longest time, and now you see a general awakening to the fact that, you know, this is ridiculous. And you have people sneaking cameras into police training sessions where they talk about this, and you see some of the most horrendous, I would say some of the most horrendous things ever caught on tape insofar as it applies to property rights. You generally see a cultural awakening to this. And I think that in and of itself is a testament to what they've done and what can be accomplished. Being said, the machinery of government works very, very slowly.
So,
I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, go ahead.
just to your point about a cultural shift, I see that cultural shift in marijuana legalization. And in Texas, I see it in marijuana decrim and the high hopes for it passing and being.
Pun intended, of course.
And the reason the prohibition of marijuana, and it goes to all drugs, but we'll keep it in the arena of the most palatable right now. It's inextricably linked with this presumption of guilt culture that we have with the police. So it seems like the asset forfeiture, the arcane laws and all of this sort of thing that seem impenetrable, and removing the incentive seems very difficult. I think that us really championing decrim of nonviolent crimes is really what is going to take a huge chunk out of asset forfeiture, right?
No, it's completely, and I think that it can move, especially when we're talking about just cultural shifts, it can move a lot faster. As I said, I'm from the Texas Public Policy Foundation. We have our Right on Crime campaign. Could you imagine 5 years ago, or let's even say 10 years ago, can you imagine 10 years ago having a group of conservatives fighting to get the bat rack saying, we need to lower our prison population? I mean, this is becoming the conservative standpoint on criminal justice. I mean, that was, I mean, 10 years ago, that was completely anathema to.
Yeah, they're saying lock everybody up.
Exactly, and then it's, you know, again, the fight to get to the bat rack there was, what can we add to the, you know, there's got to be a class of criminal that we're not quite hitting on. How can we expand our code to cover that? And and that led to this era of over-criminalization, and that's one of the things that we push against. When we have state laws, and I give Mark Levin, who most of you met, a ribbing about this. You know, everyone knows his story about the felony, you know, if you harvest oysters, you know, there is a felony that can end you in jail. Now, of course, you know, I was like, oh, well, you should suggest a bill to get rid of that. I was like, I'm going to lose the story then. So I think when it comes to over-criminalization, that's illustrative of the pendulum swinging back the other way. And I think that where we're at right now, both in the national discourse, is that you generally see people, I'm not even going to say hungry for change, but at the very least open. If we talk about penal reform nationally, you know what the biggest wins in the states were last year? Louisiana and Mississippi. Now they have ways to go, and they'll be the first to tell you. But in Louisiana, they got 7 out of 8 reform bills through. And if you think that, you know, there are some powerful interests in the law enforcement lobby here, you have no idea what's going on in Louisiana. I mean, that is something entirely different. So the fact that these legislatures show that they are open to intelligent arguments, that they're open to reasoned reforms that will lower prison population and lead to better both public safety and public expenditure outcomes, I think that shows what can be done. Now, again, the cynic in me wants to say, yeah, but you know, so 10 years from now, who knows what conversation we're having. I think I'm more optimistic though. I think that again, not taking the stance of any organization here, but I think that the most compelling argument that can be made about civil asset forfeiture is on the federalism issue. If you look at what is empowered by equitable sharing, if you look at what is powered by equitable sharing, it is the federal government usurping the state's ability to police itself. That is why I think that if equitable sharing reform goes through at the federal level, that doesn't mean the states will all fall, all the dominoes will fall next, but at least the legislatures, what the law on the books is going to be entirely on the onus of the states, and those people are more proximate to their life.
But we can nullify laws here. I mean, a lot of the legislators don't have the cojones to do that, but we can nullify.
I was going to jump into something. There was one thing I thought of that would be a cool local project, and no one ever has resources to do this. But I figured we talked about federal, and we've covered the state. I think it would be super interesting if you put together kind of like are y'all familiar with law school clinics? Like there'll be these law students will work on cases under the supervision of a law professor, kind of so that they have an opportunity to learn. And I really wish somebody would set up one of these law clinics where basically you just stand around outside like a court that hears all these asset forfeiture seizure cases and just provide representation to everybody as they come in there. And then, like, don't you imagine people, if you help people get their money back, they'd probably donate parts of it to some project like this. So it would be really interesting to see, and I think it would get a lot of positive press in terms of trying to push for these reforms of one location, if you could somehow target a particular court, I guess, in particular, and just make sure that you're like, everybody that's showing up there to have their assets seized is represented. It would be it would turn the whole thing on the head, right? I mean, part of what we're talking about is the standard's too low, there's a lot of other problems, a lot of people default, but what if everybody didn't default? What if everybody showed up? What if everybody had attorneys? I mean, it might be really interesting to see how just that alone would change it. So I say that not completely as like, I don't want to have to help set something like that up because it sounds like a lot of work. I would absolutely help set something like that up. I don't want to have to set it up by myself. But I also say it just to say that I think that there's always a local option, and you all actually are kind of inspiring in this regard. Like, you all always think local. And so, I would continue to think local too, and I think local in Texas can be leveraged into state reforms. So
Overburden the system.
in speech, in rant.
That's a very Cloward and Piven strategy for resisting that. No, and I say such facetiously. I think Matt makes a very good point. If we're talking about this in terms of rote incentives, and you push back, I mean, think about it. If 10% more
Right.
resisted this, that would cut into the profitability of this immensely. These cases would backlog, they wouldn't get through, the money would not hit the account much more slowly.
Now, where do we get the attorneys from and everything else?
No,
What if we could have a
Talking
bill
about the
that said they must be assigned a public defender? If their assets were
that would
forfeited
produce produce a fiscal note of about $3 zillion.
It was super expensive.
Well, that's the point.
But unfortunately, we are in a fiscally conservative state, and rightfully so. Something that carried that kind of a fiscal note would probably.
Well,
But it
all
could be a
asset funds-
point, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
it could be a point when you're talking to the committees for different bills of how ridiculous it is, just to prove your
Like,
point.
it'd be $3 zillion to have to provide defendants.
Paid
That's
for
what
out
TDF
of
says.
seized assets.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
No.
But either the state's
You're making fun of our
paying for it or
estimates
people
again?
are paying for it. It just shows the weight of the burden, how much it weighs. So it's either the state providing it or the people. If all the people retain an attorney for this, that's the bill. It's just showing, okay.
Well, you're already paying for attorneys in this process, just
Mhm.
not on
Just
it.
the ones
Not,
taking
I was saying, not on your side though.
Yeah, and then we haven't mentioned how we're spending all these resources on getting all these forfeited assets. We aren't actually fighting crime, right? Like, shouldn't our police be busy actually fighting crime?
You know what though?
Thank you so much, Jill.
That's
But here's where I reject that premise a little bit, because sometimes it does.
Oh,
Sometimes it does.
I completely understand that. But pulling someone over for a tail light and then asking if they have cash, is that the most valuable, highest and best use of our police officers' time?
No, not at all.
To them.
That's
But
right.
and you asked a question earlier that I think would be a good segue, and we're going to have to get on militarization. of the
Yeah,
police.
let's do it. Let's do it.
So the thing with militarization is